Everyone wanted bikes, so here's a bike that I crashed and ruined. Look at her, she's just so pretty. But I've got to pull a clutch out because I might have damaged it at the last round. So show you how to take a clutch out of an R1. Hopefully it's not warped. Let's get into it, shall we? Whoop. So last round of the year, I won the last round of the year to win the Open.
It's Ricky Elder. I don't think I've seen you with a bigger smile on your face.
I might have done a few celebratory burnouts.
Surely not.
Yeah, I did. And I haven't wanted to look because I boiled the bike over and I might have damaged the clutch because my clutch sits stacked really high. We even put it in one video where I'm trying to pull away and the traction control's cutting in. It's like as I'm trying to do a burnout, and then it would grip and spit. So it wasn't great, but I'm worried I've obviously burnt the clutch out. So obviously December we go away to Cartagena, and after every race meeting I'd have it out anyway. I just haven't had it out. So we'll pull a clutch out and show you how the clutch works, how it's assembled, how we measure it, what we do, that sort of thing. And then we'll have a look at the steels and see whether they're in good shape or bad shape. Cal's been pretty busy, so he stripped it all apart. We've had all the throttle bodies off, checked all that, gone through everything at the top, repositioned the wiring loom, checked all that, gone through that. But you can see this is where I tipped off at Donington. I went into gravel at Coppice and it just eats everything. Look, it just damages everything. So
yeah.
It breaks my heart. And then he's gone through all the boxes because he's sorted out the R6 behind you.
There she is.
To get that ready to sell. But he's also sort of done an inventory of everything we've got for it and sorted out everything we own, what is for that, what is for this. So we've started to go through those bits. So the bodywork's all stripped off, and then he started to make a list of parts, what we need for this.
Yep.
To get it back tip top if we do need anything. And then also, because we blew through a load of spares at Donington when I crashed it, what spares we need as well. So we can build up the spares box
ready
over
for
winter.
next season.
Yeah, exactly. So
there is going to be a next season.
Yeah, I think so. I've got championships to defend now, haven't I?
Well, there you go. You see.
Well, not 600, but the Open. So we've drained the fluid out and a filter. So it's been draining for a couple of days. I'll leave it drained anyway because I'm waiting for race drilled bolts like this. Look.
Yep.
So I'm waiting on the sump bung to turn up. Because it's race drilled, so it's easy to lock wire because you've got to lock wire your sump bolt. But also it's got a magnet in it. It just basically helps see what debris you've got in a sump, but also helps keep the sump clear of debris, if that makes sense. These are proper engine covers, so you have to run these. You can't race without engine covers on. Long gone are the days where you'd use them just to protect your bike. Now you have to use them.
Yep.
And they're FIM approved as well, so they're impact. Well, you can see.
Absolutely. So again, how it differs to the road version.
Yeah, exactly. They're there to stop the abrasion.
Yep.
One, the damage you do to your engine, but also the abrasion you get when you throw it down the road, and then the subsequent leakings. What I've done so far is I've just pulled the bolts out that hold race cover on.
Yep. So this is something you do
after every round.
Every single round?
Yeah.
Wow.
You should really do it more because the clutches dry out.
Yep.
That's the big thing. Right, let's take the clutch off. We'll take clutch cable off first. So if I back the adjuster off, back the clutch adjuster, so put all the slack into the clutch cable.
Yep.
Like so, and normally then you should have maybe just enough, there you go, enough to unhook the cable, look.
Ah, there we go.
So I haven't got to play the adjustment there then.
Yeah.
Right, so now we have got the cable out of the way, so the clutch is unhooked. I've just popped the two clutch cable bolts back in there, and then we'll just spin the cover bolts out. So these aren't the standard bolts. The standard bolts are like double hex 10 mils. We tried to change all the bolts to race heads, and the advantage of that is everything fits.
Yep.
You haven't got to change tools to this side or change tools to that side.
Yep.
So that's why we do it really. And then when you start going to the race bolts like those,
hang on, let's have a look. Yep.
Is then you lock wire. That's how you lock wire everything.
Yep.
That's the point really. So we run, if you look at my R6, everything on my R6 is these bolts, because I'm a bit of a bolt slag.
You are. You like a Gucci bolt, don't you?
I love a Gucci bolt.
Yeah. Titanium bolt, perhaps?
Yeah. Some.
Yeah.
And then other things, I'd still use steel.
Okay.
So anything you've got to undo or do a lot of, I wouldn't use tie.
Why is that then?
Because you can tie galls very, very easily. So you've got to, that was the dowel.
It landed there safely.
Yeah.
There we go, look.
So what happens is you pull on the clutch lever and there's that worm gear inside.
Yeah.
And that worm gear, lifts the outer plate against the springs. So it pulls the clutch off the springs.
Yep.
Take that dowel out so you don't lose it. And then we use kit gaskets. So we don't use normal OEM gaskets, we use kit gaskets. The difference with a kit gasket is it's not one-time use. You can use it over and over and over and over again.
Handy.
To a point.
Yeah.
Like it won't last forever, but at least then if you're pulling a clutch apart every session, you're not having to put a brand new gasket in, because clutch cover leaks happen a lot.
Magnet fishing.
Magnet fishing.
Have you watched those on YouTube?
Yeah, where they go hunting for stuff in lakes.
Oh, my kids love those.
Do they?
Yeah.
I hate these bolts.
Why is that?
Because it's a 4mm and it's blatantly going to round off. This is the spring pack that sets the clutch tension.
Yeah.
So as you start moving towards a race bike, you would put...
That didn't feel nice.
Didn't undo. Oh, thank God for that.
Oh, what's the worst case if that doesn't?
You're having to drill out. I'll replace them anyway. I'll get hold of James at Phoenix.
Yeah.
Motorcycles in Trowbridge. And
shout out to Phoenix.
Yeah, they look after me then, guys. And James's dad, Kev, who owns a shop, hates Hondas. So me and him get on like a house on fire.
I can imagine you are good buds.
Yeah. Saturday night, because them guys sponsor the Open that I won. So they're sponsor of that race series. And we had a good old chat about how Hondas suck.
So I can't help but notice a new bubble.
Yeah.
Is this the 2024?
This is the 2024 Snap-on Winter Collection, as modelled by yours truly.
I actually really like that.
I know, it's all right.
Yeah.
They're fleece lined as well, the company. Yeah.
Keep your noggin toasty warm.
I know. Right, so what we'll do, the rag is filthy, but everything needs cleaning. So you've obviously got 3 bolts. You've got the outer support plate that holds the spring tension now. So that's what holds the clutch together. The bolts hold the 2 parts of the clutch together. And underneath you've got 3 springs.
Yep.
And where everybody cocks up, you've got 3 stainless steel seats. Right, so notice the outer plate is offset. You see? They're all in a straight line and they all have a cut in them, so you can put your tool down to measure your clutch height when it's in place. And then the last plate is offset. See?
Yep.
Right, so you've got to remember that. You've also got to remember that this is a slipper clutch. So there's a ramp that the clutch outer plate sits against. So if I give this a little away from stiction, can you see how that turned?
Yep.
So it sits, it goes into the ramp. Yeah. And then as it goes in, like that, it turns and engages.
Yep.
So when the clutch is on back torque, or when the wheel is driving the engine, the slipper clutch is there to brake or to open the drive back to the engine. How do you set a slipper clutch up? On a stock bike, or on a road bike, I tell you the easiest one to do it on is a GSX-R 1000, right? So when I rode Sylvan's GSX-R 1000 in the Eddie Hall video, and we came back up the runway into where you were all stood filming, do you remember I was getting it to slide coming into the...
That's right.
So what I was doing there is I'd shut off, I was in 6, I'd back shift a second, all in a block, let the clutch out, and I give it a little bit of back brake to help it slide. But essentially what happens there is the wheel tries to drive the engine.
Yeah.
The engine can't spin any faster, and that's what then controls the wheel's speed, the rotation speed at the back. So what happens then is you start to slip. Right, these are the shims in the bottom, like that.
There we go. Let's have a look
All right,
at that.
and so that's the spring seat. Can you see the polish top and bottom?
If you just wiggle it about a bit. Yep.
So there at that notch, there at that notch, that's where the the spring's been walking on a seat, chattering on a seat.
Yeah.
Let me just pop that back in. So I want the outer face out. Let me strip this and then we'll go through. We'll talk about slipper clutches.
Okay.
Because people kind of tie themselves in knots over slipper clutches. People get hung up on slipper clutches when they don't need them.
Okay.
So the easiest thing to do here is to slip the whole bit. So right, the outside basket is driven by the crankshaft.
Yep.
So that is always turning at engine speed no matter what, right? When you're in neutral, your clutch is engaged and you have no gear drive in. So the outer basket, the inner basket, and the clutch is all clamped together and you're driving the input shaft. It's the same on your car as well.
Yep.
It's no different. You then pull the clutch lever, which pulls on this, the drive plate essentially, the pressure plate, pulls against the springs and releases the pressure off the friction plates. That then allows the outer basket and the inner basket to turn at different speeds. That's what a clutch is, right? So then how you're able to transmit so much torque and power through such a little thing is by what they call a multi-plate clutch. So this is what a DCT clutch looks like in a car. You probably see all the big Evos and stuff like that. They talk about running multi-plate clutches. They're not running this many clutches, but they are running a multi-plate clutch. And that just allows you to pack more friction in the same space.
Yep.
So what I should have done was got a little Allen key. Right, and then right on the inside between the inner two friction plates is the anti-rattle spring. So I'm turning the gearbox now. So that's the gearbox turning.
Yep.
And then I can't turn the outer one. All right. So on the back of the clutch is some damper springs that are sat between the basket and the drive gear, and that's to take some of the shock out in both directions to just make everything a little bit kinder.
Yep.
And then pressed onto the back of the clutch basket is the gear drive for the oil pump. So the oil pump's constantly driven off the back of the clutch.
Yep.
And that is it. Yeah, no play, no nothing. Just got a bloody big nut in the middle, and that's the input shaft outer nut. So what you would do is you put a clutch holder over the inner basket, take the nut on and off, and then it's got a lock tab on it as well.
There we go.
So those are essentially the different parts of the clutch. And then this is essentially a friction plate. So we'll come back to the slipper clutch in a minute, because the slipper clutch is essentially what those ramps are there.
Okay.
We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's just spread this across the bench. This is the innermost friction. You see how it's dry?
Yeah.
And that's what happens to a clutch. Because it doesn't have a squirt jet at it or anything like that.
Yep.
It dries out and it burns. And then what you get is you get this build-up of debris on the blocks.
Okay.
You see I've cleaned it out?
Yep.
So that's friction material that I've dragged away. Yeah. And that inner one has got some wear.
Oh yeah.
Got some wear grooves in it, which are reflective in the bottom of that basket. So that's one plate. That's inner plate, right? You see I've got scorch marks.
Yeah.
And you go in that. Then you go anti-rattle spring, which sit on the inside like that. And then the next steel. Yeah, so you can see where the anti-rattle spring's been sat
Yeah.
on that plate. And then now you're starting to see spots.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah. And is this normal use doing racing? Or is
No,
this...
that's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I did 2 meetings and I never changed a clutch. I don't know how much the clutch had done before. What we'll do in a minute, we'll get a new clutch out and we'll compare them. Remember now, these things are 100 odd foot-pounds of torque, but bone dry look.
Yep.
Bone dry, not a bit of oil on them. And now you're starting to see the tone change in the friction plates. Can you see? Colours changing.
Yeah.
Don't know whether you can quite see the thickness difference between the pads. How thicker they are on this plate than that plate.
Yep. A small difference.
It's tiny.
You
it's
can
tiny.
see.
Yeah, like wow. There's a reason they give. It's I'll get the workshop manual up. But it's like it's under a min to max on clutch pack thickness.
Okay.
I mean, we're to a point now where these are bone dry. So what you should be doing is on a race weekend. There you go. That's how now you can start to see oil on the outside plates.
Yeah.
But it's sporadic, and then I got a big drag mark through that one. Look.
That's it.
That's more how I would expect it to look.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. And you got a soaking wet plate, Because ultimately, there you go. You can see how clean that one is.
Yeah.
Because it's the oil that keeps the clutch cool, but also you do want a degree of lubrication, because if it was completely dry, it would burn out.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can see, all right, you've got the friction pads haven't got oil on them,
Yeah.
you can start to see the difference in color, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's that. And then if I show you the steels, I won't open them because they're different sizes. So like we've got a 32400, 32510, 32520. So you've got different sizes to set your pack height up.
Yeah.
That's how they should look.
Fresh.
Not like that. I admit you will get a little bit of wear, but not like that.
What's the cost involved for a new set?
Probably 400 quid. You shouldn't be changing the clutch every round.
Yeah.
But then if you look in the bottom of that basket,
The sort of scoring on it?
yeah, and it is rough,
Yeah.
that you can run your nail across it. What we'll have to try and do, the problem is now you go, oh yeah, well what you do there is, like, it should almost be like that, because you see how clean that is.
Yeah.
If you go and machine that to clean it up, what you do then is you change the working distance, because that's clamped up, that's as tight as it will go. You then change the distance from the bottom of the basket to the top of the basket.
Oh.
So what you've got to be mindful there is, if you take 0.1 of a mil off to clean it, you've got to put 1 of a mil on the stack.
Yeah.
To take up for that. So we were talking about a slipper clutch. If you didn't have a slipper clutch, and you'll find that old Ducatis, Supermotors, stuff like that, they will run a very tight clutch or a very tight slipper clutch so that they get the engine directly controlling the wheel and vice versa.
Okay.
So that when they close the throttle and they backshift 3-4 gears, the wheel tries to drive the engine, because that's what you naturally do on overrun. So that's where your braking control, that's where your engine braking comes from. And the engine will go, I cannot spin any faster than this. So it will control the rear wheel speed. The rear wheel speed cannot keep up with the speed of the tarmac underneath it.
Yeah.
So what happens then is you get slip, or you get rear wheel, you get negative slip or negative torque, all these things everybody bloody calls it. But essentially the rear wheel cannot keep traction with the floor, so it slides. This is why when you add a little bit of back brake going into a corner, it wants to slide in more. What the slipper clutch does is it allows you to set exactly that, a degree of slip. You don't want it to be open like a two-stroke, so when you shut the throttle, it opens all the way up and you've got no engine brake in. But the other side of it is you don't want it so that every time you shut the throttle, the bike wants to go sideways.
Yeah.
So the idea of a slipper clutch is to allow you to backshift as fast and as hard as you can, and the rear wheel speed never puts the engine in danger. And by that I mean taking it to 18,000 RPM when it doesn't want to go there.
Yeah.
It will slip, it will open up before that happens, and that's tuned into the clutch. Now, these are quite rudimentary in their design, because ultimately what controls the slipper clutch is the preload springs behind the basket, like in an R6. They're like 3 tang washers, and they've got feet on them, and the springs that control the clamping force of the outer friction plate or the outer pressure plate to the basket.
Yeah.
Then we've got other tools like engine braking control on the throttle. So if my slipper clutch can't keep up, we'll use the throttle blades to then dictate how easy or how much negative torque the engine creates. Make sense?
Makes sense. You've got multiple ways of dealing with that.
Yeah, so, and you use the two. Ultimately, what you would do to start with, before you start fucking around with engine brake control, is you would understand how your clutch behaves.
Yeah.
So you'd essentially turn your engine braking off, or turn your engine braking control off, allow the throttle to close, and then see what your clutch does, set your clutch up, and then go on from there. So the two big ones really everyone plays around with are Suter and Sigma. I think there's a Suter in my R6. This is a stock clutch in this. When you start putting slipper clutches in, aftermarket slipper clutches, they need check-in all the time.
Right.
So that R6, you have to be on top of.
Yeah.
And we are, like, literally every day, I have to recheck that. Whereas this, slap it together, check your pack height, and away you go. This is not anywhere near as heavily modified as that is. That's running right on the limits of what it can do.
That's this one here. Just
Yeah, that's my R6.
the viewers.
That's an OMG engine, 148 horsepower out of the box, once they've done everything they need to do.
Yeah.
This is a pussycat. So this is probably 30 horsepower down, 30, 40 horsepower down on what superbikes do. But then the superbikes will run a really trick clutch in them. So if you watch MotoGP and you go and watch it like turn 1 at Barcelona, they come screaming in, 6 to first, and the bike turns on the lock stops all the way to the apex.
Yep.
And there's two reasons they do that. One, if a back wheel's sliding, or you've got a lot of braking effort through the back wheel, you compress the back of the bike. So the bike sits down because you essentially pull it by the back. You pull it by the back wheel.
Yep.
So the bike wants to stretch. Yeah. So at the minute, look, the swing arm's at an angle. So if, as you drive along,
Yep.
and you brake using the back brake only, the bike doesn't dive onto the nose like it does in the front. What it does is it feels like it sits.
Yeah, yeah.
So the bike stretches, pulls the back of the bike down,
Yep.
and it unloads the front.
Okay.
So then you can put more braking effort into the front
Yep.
because it's not going to overwhelm the tyre. That's why when you see like Moto2 boys crash, it's as they're transitioning, as the bike's straightening up.
Right.
So a bike sideways, they are maximum braking effort. Top Rack does it all the time as well. You watch how Top Rack goes in. Whenever you see a bike racing crash now, it's as the bike comes back in line. The bike stretches at the rear, or it lifts at the rear because the retardation force for the rear tyre changes.
Yeah, yeah.
And it overloads the front. Yeah. So as the bike is coming back in line, that front brake has got to be coming off. Or you're just going to close the front and dunk, down you go.
Yep.
And that's how they do it. The other reason is it helps the bike rotate in. So if you're going into a corner like this, rally cars,
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly same theory.
Yeah.
It's turn before you get there.
Yeah.
I am nowhere near that level. I slide a bike in because it looks fucking cool.
Yes.
I use a back brake on that loads, going in and going through the apex.
Yeah.
I don't use a back brake coming out because
Right.
it's not got enough power to wheelie. Whereas this, you have to use a back brake coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where the big bikes, as the riding's evolved now, they're using a back brake to go in because it flattens the bike, unloads the front. Even if they don't go in sideways, they're using a back brake to load, to bring the weight down on the rear, unload the front so they can brake harder on the front, and then transition the bike because a flat bike will pitch in. Yeah. So if you go and do track days and you're a really good level, this is why now everyone's on a finger brake.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, that's my back brake. So now as you're going into the corner, you do that on your right hand all the way to the apex.
Yep.
Well, you can do it with your left hand all the way to the apex.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's foot dependent,
Yeah.
going left is fine. Going right, my foot's in the way.
Of course.
So that's why everyone started to go to that. I don't like thumb brakes, so I use a finger brake. And it's the same kind of thing. How do we get to that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But
I am not, Simon Crafar can explain it way better than I can, and I am not the level any of them boys are. I'm dumb enough to feel what I feel and understand the mechanics of it. But I would say if you go and get a top level rider, they will explain in more detail and better what they're feeling. Like Tommy's quite good at getting across what he feels.
Yeah,
Tommy
yeah.
Bridwell.
Yeah.
But that's what I feel. And from a data point of view, that's what I see on the data when I watch with and without back brake.
Okay.
Then as you add more and more back brake, that's then when you start having to watch what your engine braking control is doing and what your slipper clutch is doing, because you're trying to slow the wheel down more. Because all you're doing is, so accelerating out of a corner, you'd normally see 8 to 10% of slip. You'd look at lads who like to turn the bike with a rear. So I don't know, Taz, he'd probably be 14 to 18% slip on a rear because they'll turn the bike with a rear. Going in, you're probably 6 to 9% of slip going into the corner. So if I'm seeing 3 or 4, I know I can bring my engine braking
Yeah.
closed more to help the bike stop. The other side of that is then I go and close my engine brake more and I use more rear brake. Then I go the other way. I start getting 10, 11, 12% of slip. So it's that having your rider habits consistent so you can tune the engine braking control and tune your clutch because they are consistent.
Yeah.
The mushy bit isn't.
Yes.
And that's why the top lads, they'll hit their marks every time and their data lines will be the same, their traces will be the same. So then as an engineer, you can set that up correctly. Whereas an amateur or a clubby or someone like me, I'll be 15 bar brake pressure 1 minute, 18 bar brake pressure the next, 6 bar brake pressure the next. Then I'll fucking panic on a lap and have my leg down.
Yeah.
You can't set everything up right then. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
Some serious levels to it.
It's as complicated as you want to make it.
Yeah. So what about MotoGP? How do we transition to that? Where does that?
The problem with
next level again.
Yeah. So I've never worked on a GP bike, so I can only sort of say what I think is going on there. But they've got essentially World Superbikes have got more open electronics than MotoGP, but MotoGP they're all trying to control grip.
Yeah.
So if you go and watch Jorge Martin, he's never out of shape. If you watch Pecco, he drifts the rear into every corner.
Yeah.
But it's consistent. It's this. And then the level of engineering they've got inside is out of this world. It's something completely different. The other thing you've got to fight as well is they've got things called ride height devices. So they've got a device on the back of their bike that will compress point A to point B.
Okay.
And they have manual control over that.
Right.
So they don't necessarily have to drag the rear brake as much in areas because they've got a ride height device that will do it for them. So going into engine braking control, which is essentially, it used to be done on air bleed with a little valve. Now on drive-by-wire, it's done on throttle butterflies, right? So if I show you that, look, right. So this is a lap from Brands Hatch. That is 48.6 second lap at Brands.
Come around this side.
That was from earlier in the season, right? So this here's my throttle trace. So I've come up paddock hill and I've shut the throttle, yeah, straight away and back shifted from third to second. So this is the purple line is my throttle. The green line is my throttle butterfly. So you can see I'm requesting there 0 throttle. But my throttle position on my butterflies is 8.8%, right? And at that transition, I'm at 0% rear wheel slip, right? Mm-hmm. And then as the RPMs come down from me closing the throttle, it's back shifted to second. So as I've pulled the gear lever, it's auto blipped, which is the green line going up, look. And then we go the other side of the blip. My throttle butterflies now are sat at 10%. My grip is shut, but my butterflies are at 10%. And my engine braking, my slip look is now at -9%. So I'm sliding the bike into the apex. Now what this doesn't show you, because I haven't got rear brake pressure on that one, is that I am absolutely yanking that fucker on.
Yep.
Because I want to try and transition in, so I'm as hard as I can onto the brakes. And then as the throttle's coming down more and more, look, so the engine braking is closing, so I've got less throttle, so my blades are closing down. My rear wheel slip is climbing, so I need to open this up. So I would say from there, go from maybe at 2% at that point to open it up. We work out on newton meters of torque, but open it up to get this dip away. And then the second we come into the apex, we get onto the side of the tyre, the slip decays, so my wheel speed and my calculated speed start matching up, because you've got calculated rear, you've got calculated engine speed, and then you've got calculated wheel speed, and we work them out from each other.
Yep.
So I know what my wheel speed is, and I know what my engine speed is. So at that wheel speed, with that gear ratio, my calculated engine speed is this. And then from that engine RPM, through that gear ratio, my calculated wheel speed is this. And we look at those two numbers and how they cross over. Because if I'm sliding on the rear, which one's telling the truth? The engine speed or the rear wheel speed?
Yeah.
Because rear wheel speed's wrong. And then you start looking at your actual GPS speed then, or your vehicle speed, and your front wheel speed. So you've got those to, because if I'm not the rider and I don't know what's going on underneath, if I'm the engineer, how do I know which data trace is accurate?
Yeah, good point.
So what's driving what? So you look at those things, and then you can see then, as I transition through the corner, and I pick the throttle up, straight away look on the edge of the tyre, just on the initial tap of the gas, I'm at like 6-7% of slip. And as I start driving down to bottom bend then, it climbs up to what, 10%? So I'm at 10% slip. I'm not even at 100% throttle yet. And that is where the top boys, if you put like Dan Cooper or George Edwards on my bike, that there to there, so that is from me touching the throttle is 15.17. Takes me 2.5 seconds from tapping the gas to get into 100% throttle. And the reason it takes that so long is because I tapped the gas early. I got impatient, I went bruh, and then I had to wait, which is why I get that plateau, then it goes up. If you go and put Coops on my bike, he wouldn't pick the throttle up till here, or even later, and he would literally just go bruh, as aggressive as I am coming off the gas, he would go on the gas. So it's that bit there that is unnecessary. I've been impatient on the throttle, and then I've had to wait for the bike to settle.
Right, okay.
And then the other thing I was going to show you is coming out of clearways then. From the second I sort of pick the throttle up at clearways, it never stops spinning. From the second I pick the throttle up at clearways, it's 5%, and it doesn't really stop spinning until I get to VMAX, which is 240 kilometers an hour before I shut the throttle. So that's, you're always spinning. You don't think you are, but you're always spinning. And then that's then where that bike hasn't got traction control, but that bike has, that's then where you've got to be careful. Because if I set my slip percentage to like 7%, I'd always be sat in traction. So that's engine braking. There is a page on this to show clutch slip, but I think that's just going too far. Because then we start looking at, you can start calculating how much clutch slip you've got then. That literally started life out as, should we just take the clutch out of my bike? What I was going to show you is, which I just noticed, if you come here, Dav, can you see those grey squares?
Yep.
So that is the outer tangs of the clutch plates.
Right.
So they don't feel like grooves, but if you wear the clutch, they become grooves.
Yep.
Does that make sense? And then you basically rattle pockets into this, and then when you open and close the clutch, it sticks and it grabs.
Right. Okay.
So we see that quite a bit as well. So these have a service life.
Yep.
Like obviously we got concerns over the bottom of this basket, the inner basket.
Yep.
And then also to watch whether you get wear on the ramps for the slipper clutch, and the same here as well. So we look pretty good there. My BMW used to eat these.
Right, okay.
Just used to absolutely wear them out. I used to have it apart all the time, put molly grease on them, everything, and I'd literally just eat them, absolutely eat them. So yeah, I'll build a new clutch, I'll get a new inner to take that away, because that roughness there straight away will transfer onto that inner plate. Cool, so think of it like a brake disc. If you put new pads on a knackered disc, you ruin new pads. So yeah, we just get that sorted. But that's a bone stock Yamaha slipper clutch. We won't do it. I won't change that. I'll stay on it. I'm much better off putting kit springs in it and being able to run a higher RPM limit and using engine braking control, because you don't want these big girls sliding. It's all right with those, but these things, you want them to grip going in.
So you can obviously change the springs in these to what different?
Yeah, so like if you go in, you can in the Yamahas as well. Obviously I got a completely different clutch, but if you went and bought like kit clutch springs, you'd get kit clutch springs. You can then obviously, we can go and look. So they do clutch spring spacers. So they sit between the pressure plate and the stanchions on the basket. And then they want you to take off the clutch cover on a modified clutch cover on the outside. So that's factory, that's GYTR, factory Yamaha, because this is a kit manual. So that's the only thing they say to change. And what that will do is that will open the clutch. So that'll allow the clutch to open more. So these put more pressure on the spring. So they sit around this stanchion, around this piece here. The spring sits on them, so what that does is that preloads the spring more. So it puts more clamping force on the clutch. So that's what those That's what those collars do.
Yeah.
So that's putting more pressure on the clutch.
Yeah.
So it's less easy to open on overrun. But the kit manuals are really bloody good, to be fair. There's a lot of trick stuff in it.
So with the Super Booster that you rode with Sylvan and Eddie Hall, that's obviously been changed now into a drag spec.
Yeah.
As Rich tries to get a 7-second quarter with it, and obviously the clutch has been a big.
Yeah. So that would be that would be great on drag, but that would be absolutely awful trying to transition into any corner.
Yeah. Because
there won't be any. So you shut the throttle, and it will just lock up the back end, and it just want to slide in.
Yeah.
So then, if you can't change it mechanically, then you need to do it electronically.
Sure.
Yeah, this is what it's talking about here. Like, so this is talking about what happens when you accel and what happens with the bike. Your centre of gravity, centre of balance. Yeah, it's like it's a science, mate.
It's almost, here come the science.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's, I think this is why Sylvan, Michael Laverty, and Simon Crafar are probably the best.
So I think you've about to be grabbed then, sorry.
Are probably best because they're very, very technical and how they explain some of the stuff that's coming across. So Michael Laverty done a piece the other day on the new Honda Aero that they're bringing through and how he explains it. And then Simon Crafar's Learn to Ride series and stuff like that. He's very good at explaining how the technology of the bike helps the rider and what he's feeling.
Okay. Are these guys on YouTube and stuff?
Yeah. Simon Crafar's ex-500 GP rider. Michael Laverty's BSB lad.
Yeah.
Very, very fast. He now runs MLav, which is a motor-free team. And then obviously Sylvan. So
yeah, of course. Yeah.
But
good stuff.
It's all good. So what we'll do is I'm going to build a new clutch pack. I'm going to order a new inner basket. I might get myself some collars.
Treat yourself.
Yeah, treat myself to some washers. But yeah. And then the other thing we've done as well, because we've done this for some race teams with our valve spring tester.
Yeah.
Is I've run batches and batches of those through the spring tester.
Yeah.
So you can match up. You get all your information on springs, you can match them up.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's good as well. All right.
Sounds good.
Feels like with this video, we've been clutching at straws.
Ah, you see.
Say hi, Kate.
Hi.
Well, let's just leave. She says she's never in a video, so now you're in a video.
I'm never here.
You said it, not me. Right.
So if we could just give everybody a shout and just say, look, if you haven't already subscribed.
Yeah, be a lamb and smash the buttons. Or is it, what was this?
You can't say the Johnny Smith one.
Oh, but his was good.
Maybe I'll drop that in.
Yeah, just drop that and steal it off his video.
Yeah.
Thanks for the inspiration, Johnny. And I'll see you Monday.
Yes.
See you Monday. Biggity biggity bop.